So, my plan today was to kind of solve one of the final exam versions, right? And leave the other one, use this kind of as a review of everything, and leave the other one for your private enjoyment. So, but to make it more fun, how about you guys solve it, not me? We nominate a volunteer. Now we get a volunteer to come and solve each individual function. Write a function called max3 that takes 3 ints and returns an int, the largest of the 3 ints. Who'd come? Who'd volunteer? Yay, thank you. You can type it in there. You can actually move this stuff so we don't have this stuff. No, you do it and we check it. That's the point.
Alright, so caps lock.
That should be b greater than or equal to,
Oh.
right? Sorry. No, you're doing the right thing.
Oh. Yeah, oh.
And
And this is harder than
b greater than or equal to
okay. Return. Did I do it right? I don't think I even have to do that one.
Oh.
Did I do that one?
Now, this is fairly reasonable, right? Can we optimize it? Can we remove stuff? Right? This should work, right? It should work if you do it this way. You have to be careful to use greater than or equal, right? But if you do that, then it should work. Do we need the first if statement? No, because the second one would work, right? If A is equal to B and B is equal to C, right, they're all equal, that would also fall on A greater than or equal to B and B greater than or equal to C. Does that make sense? So we don't really need this guy. Depending on how you write this, you may need those kinds of things, right? It's just if you are using greater than or equal, here you don't really need this guy. And really, you don't really need this condition anymore. Because that's the only other option. If you put it, then you need the extra else. If not, you're never returning or something like that, right? But this is probably a cleaner version. I don't necessarily expect you to be super clean on the exam, but it actually helps you, right? Because this is actually less code, so less chances of messing it up.
It's prettier than what I made.
There are two other ways of doing it that are relatively easy to. I mean, this is not bad, right? The problem with this one is if you do this, then it's wrong. Because now you're not doing what happens when they are equal, right? You could also do it. I normally do something like this, which is super easy, right?
But also ignoring instructions.
No. And then I can do this. And to me, this is the easiest one because I'm sure that it works. Reasonably sure. As sure as I can be without running unit tests or having a code review, right? The other way to do it is to basically do a for loop but unroll it, right? How you do it in a for loop, I would initialize the max to be the first one, right? And if the second one is bigger, I'll make max be the second, right? So if b greater than or equal to max, this idea makes sense. It's basically how you would do it with a for loop, except that you have three numbers rather than a for loop. And they all should work. Writing unit tests is left as an exercise to the reader. Write code to create a variable m1 which will contain a hash map from string to integer and put the key high associated with the value of 10. Actually, I can cheat and get this into useful stuff, right? Maybe. Or something like that. Download. Open it in something where I can cut and paste. Yay! And just so it keeps compiling, I'll put it here, right? And then somebody will volunteer and do it, right? Somebody else will volunteer and do it. If not, we'll start nominating volunteers. We'll name volunteers. You volunteered, right, Oscar? Yeah, thank you. And that should be fairly easy, right? It's just translating from English into Java. M1 is the variable name.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Parentheses.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
Cool. Given the interface iProduct, the last page, create a class laptop computer that implements said interface. So, this is that thing. God. Yeah. What? What? I am an idiot. Okay. As you would notice, this actually wouldn't compile because my word processor very helpfully capitalized interface. Because you should start your sentences with a capital letter, right? I didn't actually compile this, but this is what we need to do, right? So we need to create now a class laptop computer. I'll give you a minute and then somebody will volunteer, right? You know you're in. That's what you get for sitting on the front. And you go to the easy one. At least the one where you write more. Not necessarily hard. static class. Start it with static. Which in the exam you wouldn't need to, but I'm trying to get this to still compile. If we ever wanted to.
Text.
Gonna make your life easier. Make it capital. String is capital S.
Oh, yes.
Just so you don't, so you understand and we can help you. Because you have an idea. On an exam, right, if you put string with a lowercase s, I wouldn't even notice. In fact, I doubt I can distinguish your lowercase s from your uppercase s, right? Go inside the brace. No.
Okay, sorry.
There.
My brain has been full of other things, so I've let this slide too much, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier to not be the passive person, the pair programming pair, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see what you're doing wrong. I'm not that. No, you need to declare the constructor first.
Oh, right.
Capital L. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we can, if you don't mind, let me.
Yeah, I'm
Now
admittedly
you-
still bad at these.
Okay. So that tells you what you need to practice.
Yep. Pretty much the entire second half of the class.
Okay. How do we declare a constructor? We are not creating an instance. We are not creating a variable, which is what we did here, right? We are declaring a constructor. What does a constructor look like?
The name of the class.
It's almost like a method, but it's the same name of the class, and you don't have a return value, right? So it's laptop computer string name double price, and this is how I have normally been doing it.
That's what I was going to say.
We actually didn't say that we were implementing that stuff. So we need to say implement iProduct, right? If we want to implement it. And now it helpfully starts telling me that, no, I'm not implementing it, right? Which the paper doesn't have autocomplete or signaling errors, but now I'm not implementing it. I need to implement all of this stuff, right? So I need to implement void set name string name. This is setting, right? So it's this dot name equals name, right? And then string, and this should be public. On the interface they are not, because everything's public on the interface, but in here they have to be, right?
Can you explicitly declare the public on the interface, or will it give you?
I think now you can. It used to be an error at some point in time, but I think now you can. Yeah, it's not complaining. See you. And we had one thing, right? If cheap method returns true if the price is less than 300, false otherwise, right? So public boolean is cheap. And we don't really need all these pieces. So I'm gonna do it for name, but not for price, right? You can do it either way. In here, we need them because we are using the same name here. Right, so. In the other guys, we don't need them, right?
So, given like set price as a past parameter price.
Oh, you're right. Never mind. In here, we need it. Yes, you're right. So. In here, we don't need them. Yeah. You need them only to disambiguate. If not, you don't need them. You can put it. If it makes your brain happier, put it. Any questions? So given your laptop computer class above, write code to create a variable p1 of type laptop computer and assign to a new laptop computer named my brand super cheap and with a cost of $250. Oops. Let's type in C++. This is Q4. What does that look like? Somebody dictate. How do I create a variable P1 of type laptop computer? Type, and then the name of the variable, right? And I'm going to initialize it to a new laptop computer named, and I have my constructor that takes the name and the price. So my brand super cheap. We are a price of $250. It's not super cheap anymore, but it was a year ago. Yeah. Yeah, $250 now is not super cheap anymore. $100 is. Yeah. Depends on what kind of laptop.
I was going to say, I buy Macs, I'd kill for a $250 laptop.
Yes, $250 Mac. Yeah, you can get them. They are white. They're the MacBook White.
Yeah,
Only 10 years old.
There's a reason I've had this thing since 2011.
But they have the nicest form factor ever.
Maybe like an ounce or something.
Yeah, the MacBook Air 13 is for me the best form factor ever. It's like my perfect laptop. Maybe the 11, but
So, like, on the test, do you want us to do the public static?
no.
Just that.
Just this line, right? I'm doing the other stuff because I want the compiler to not yell at me, potentially, right? So we could compile this, run it, test it, doing all those things. And so also on the test, you don't have to do static, because that's because I'm putting it inside the same file. Write the function remove cheap product that takes a list of iProduct and returns another list. The return value contains all the products in the parameter that are not cheap products. The original list should not be modified, right? So I'm returning a list of I product. So what do? I need to create a list of iProducts, right? Can I, well, yeah. List iProduct, actually, yeah. Output equals answer equals new. I cannot create a list, I need to create one of the classes, right? Now I need to navigate through my input list and sometimes add it to this answer list, right? For product p colon, actually, how about products? Well, no. Input, right? This is what I want to do, but I cannot just do it like that. I need to check, right? When do I do it? P is not cheap, right? Not P dot is cheap. Yeah, it's horrible, but I will. We could, right? It's just for int I equals 0, I less than input dot size plus plus I. Sure.
That re-instantiates P each time it loops, or?
It doesn't, you're not instantiating, you're getting the value, right? Your P is a variable, right? But not, it points to already existing objects that came on the input list, right? You're never creating new objects. You're not calling new.
Well, it's a declaration.
Yes, you officially the variable P, yes, gets recreated at every pass of the loop, sort of, kinda. The variable, not the objects. Yes, you could declare it outside. Normally, you want to declare it inside so you don't pollute your namespace, so that other stuff can have P's. In a function that's 5 lines, it doesn't matter. In bigger and bigger things, you want your variables to have as small scope as possible. Write a function highest price product. Takes an array of iProduct and returns a double the highest price of any product. Oh wait, this was an array. And normally, like, somebody would ask the obvious question. What's the obvious question when you read that? What do I do if the array is empty? So I normally tell, usually the standard thing is like, yeah, assume that it's not empty, right? But I don't always write it when I write it. Yeah, return -1, return -infinity, or right, or raise an exception. But let's assume that so we initialize it to the first element in the array, right? To the price of the first element in the array, and then what do we do? If it's higher price, then we change, right? And that is actually the end of the exam. There were a couple of things that I didn't really test on this final, right? I mean, there is a limit of time, right? So there were kind of two big things that weren't here. Did you find them? We didn't do exceptions, right? And we didn't do recursion. So let's modify this stuff, right? Return or raise an exception. Raise an irregular arguments exception if the array is empty, right? So how do we know if an array is empty? Null is different than empty, right? What's an empty array? It's an array whose length is 0, which is different than null, right? Sorry? To tell you the truth, that is kind of like, that is not very well standardized, because this becomes philosophy, right? What kind of error is this? But many times when you build software, you define your own exception classes. And so you end up defining your own exception hierarchy. And each one of your exceptions will have a different one. But also Java, the Java standard library defines a bunch of exceptions. One of them is illegal argument exception. And I tend to use it often.
Well, these are predefined. Right?
Illegal argument exception is predefined, as is null pointer exception, which is the other one that you would see. And so we could have stuff like if products is null, and then I would need to do this here. And of course, so how would we do this recursively? We would need to be passing the index, right, of the element. And so what we would have is the highest price product from here until the end of the array. Does that make sense? So I would have an I products and int from. I tend to call it from. How do I know that I'm done? And I'm gonna go up, right? So how do I know that I'm done? Sorry? From is equal to length minus 1, right? And in that case, what do I return? Static to say what, right? Double. Products of what? Products is if not, this will get me, right? Now, how is price product rack? And then if max rest greater than products of from dot get price, right? And now we need our wrapper function, which is what we really wanted to write, right? And that what would return yes, you do need to remember recursion. Yes, you do need to know how to do exceptions. No, you don't need to remember all the I/O classes. I'm assuming that you can Google them. So I promise you that I will not make you do anything that requires other than simple input and output. That's the stuff that you go read. That's the stuff that you Google. But you do need to have a clue about lists and array lists and maps and hash maps or tree maps or those kinds of things.
We don't do any inheritance other than.
You are required to know about inheritance. We did cover it more last class. This one required you to implement an interface, which is not quite inheritance. But I could require you to extend a class or extend an interface. Yes, you are required to know that stuff. The previous midterm will probably get you a lot of the, if you want to go review it, right? You can look at the previous midterm and that kind of gets you more recursion and those things and learning here. I am leaving the other final unanswered on purpose so that you do it rather than thinking that by looking at the solutions you learned all you need to learn. Going through the assignments and kind of redoing the assignments would probably be a good thing towards studying too. What other things you can do to study? Coding BAT has some things, but coding BAT should be too easy for you for now, right now, hopefully. HackerRank maybe better, and they have a thing for Java in particular that may have. So they have object-oriented programming, exception handling, may not be. By the way, there is a bunch of sites like this. I can't remember HackerRank. It has a memorable name for me, so that's the main reason why I do it. But all of them tend to make money by selling you as an employee. But if you are starting your career and you're thinking about getting a job, doing these kinds of things is good as preparation for the exam, as preparation for job interviews, and potentially as something that employers will come bug you about jobs, which is not a bad thing. I don't even remember the other. There is a bunch of guys like HackerRank. Lead code? Lead code. Yeah. There is other sites like this. Just Google HackerRank comparators or something like that, or Topcoder. Topcoder is nice too. Any other questions? No. We will have the exam on Monday, 5 days from today, here. Hopefully the police will not think to open the room. I'll try to get it open beforehand. For the majority, hopefully, of the online people, I will be also doing the exam on the following Sunday, which is the 11th at 2 p.m. If any of you would prefer to come at that time, let me know and we can do it. Any other questions? Any other things? No? We're good. You will probably be spammed about filling out evaluations for this class. Please do so. And note if you have any particular thing that you want to say, that would be good. Any particular feedback? Those things tend to be very good about numerical stuff, but they don't tend to say. So, how's the class going? Seems okay?
Unstructured. We've done this a million times.
Third time.
Right?
Yeah. For this particular class. Yeah. Does having the unit tests and things like that actually help you? Is that for the assignment?
Oh, yeah.
Is that good?
Is there, someone was telling me in the undergraduate, you just do a code, you don't do anything, you write your classes from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And that can be a little harder.
Yeah, I also am too lazy to grade. They actually submit printouts of labs and things like that, which to me is just like, computers are really good at breaking that up, right? Computers are really good at comparing inputs and outputs. Why would you not do that? On the other hand, and that may be part of the reason why, especially at the undergrad level, the learning curve can be steep, right? I mean, you guys were having issues the first couple of weeks with sending pull requests and Gradle and all of that stuff. And you guys are those. On the other hand, by now you have gone through the pain, and so hopefully your next job will be easier because you have gone through the pain of something similar. And of course, you can be guaranteed that on your next job you're going to use Eclipse and Gradle, right?
Yeah. It's nice to use the IDE.
There is 17 different IDEs and 17 different building things. So you'll probably have to use something different, right? I mean, with your law, Murphy's law guarantees that your IDE will be IntelliJ and your build will be Maven and you'll be using Subversion rather than Git. But on the other hand, that would still probably be a lot easier once you open up one. It's just, do I press F13 or F11? let me stop this so we don't